We are live for another edition. So let's start off with this. Uh, Kirby Smart's press conference. The big news, I guess, from the entire thing is Jordan Hall out with another stress fracture in the other leg. Still don't know how long he's going to be out. Don't know if he's going to be ready for the Clemson game or not. We have no idea. Obviously, has the art of deception going on. I guess any follow up on that?
No, but as a way of follow up, I guess, is I have a reporter asked Kirby, are there any position groups that you're, I don't know what the word was, nervous about in terms of depth? And he said, yes. And he said, well, which ones are they? I'm not going to tell you that.
Right.
I think D line is definitely a place where depth is going to be an issue, especially early on. Have no idea when Hall's going to come back, but Ingram Dawson missed all last year, so he's coming back off of injury. We've got a lot of younger guys that are going to have to step up and play a role, right? So I think what's the guy's name? Number 52, Chris Miller.
Yeah,
getting a lot more snaps. So we'll see, but I would say we've been saying it all year. If there is a weakness on this team, and there's I think it's defensive line and specifically defensive line depth. I think but outside of Hall, most of them are just soft tissue. They're relatively as a team. At least we're not Texas on our third running back. So let's just hope that the trend continues when we get through camp healthy. But it's going to be an issue, especially early on in the season.
Yeah, and you got you got two games that are legitimately big boy games to start out the gate. It's Clemson and Kentucky, so depth is going to be important. I don't know if we'll see depth come into play in those two games, but it's a talking point either way.
I think it may come into play more in the early part because of the heat. Quite honestly,
yeah. Thankfully you play at a dome, and then you play at night in Lexington. So,
I guess those are saving graces potentially.
Yeah, the Tennessee Tech game. I hope depth really shows up in that game. We're playing fourth stringers at that point. Speaking of depth, there's been a lot made about what Kirby said in the press conference Tuesday about the deterioration of football and the lack of depth that Georgia has. I know me and you talked about it a little bit off air. A lot of people, so to set this up, there's a couple of people that like national media members that have been basically we're like, this is a good sign, give Kirby a tissue, boo hoo hoo. This is what happens with the transfer portal and NIL. It evens out the playing field. To me, and if you follow the Twitter, Terminus Sports _ATL, or Terminus Sports or Terminus _Sports ATL on Twitter. Bud Elliott got very mad at me at 7:30 in the morning because that's not what Kirby said. To me, I think what he was saying was that the quality of depth that Georgia has right now is not where it would have been 4-5 years ago because the guys that are coming in that are freshmen are not ready to play at the highest level of college football and compete at the highest level of college football. And especially whenever you got Clemson on the horizon, that's big boy football, and you don't have guys ready to play, that would be a concerning thing. So I know you want to give your opinion. So,
well, it gives a lot of Kirby's comment, I guess, gives a lot of room for interpretation. I took it to mean something a little bit different, is that because of the transfer portal and NIL, you get these heralded 4-star, 5-star guys on campus, and because they're not mature, don't know college football, obviously inexperienced at playing college football, but yet they've been told their whole lives, oh, you're gonna be a first round draft pick, and you're gonna play in the league. Well, when they get on campus, a little bit of a humbling experience, and I think it can be new for them. And so if they don't get playing time or sufficient playing time, they'll transfer and go somewhere else. And you're putting guys on the field, and it's not just Georgia. It's going on, I think, in all of college football. You're putting guys on the field that they're not mature, they're not polished. That's one of the things that Kirby, kind of different, but Kirby talks about it. He's not sure if that fast offense is really good for football because it's sloppy. I think his argument's the same. I'm not sure in some respects, I'm not sure NIL and transfer portal is good for the game because I think he's saying the skill set, even though they're 4 and 5 star guys, are not getting a chance to develop before they're put on the field. They'll transfer somewhere else and get playing time. So that's what I took that as meaning. And I'm not sure I'm right, but that to me is as good an interpretation as everybody else has been arguing about.
Yeah, so I don't think we're that far off in our interpretations. Obviously, we believe that the depth is just not ready to play at the collegiate level or at the highest collegiate level. So the way I took it, because there's a follow-up question, I don't know who asked. It was actually pretty good. It might have been Brooks, which hurts me that I have to admit that. But I think he was the one that asked, and I could be wrong, but he's the one that asked, is it NIL? Is it transfer portal? What is it? And Kirby expanded saying, like, freshmen come in and they're not ready and they're not getting the attention that they should have had in high school to be ready. I think kind of we're talking about the same things, but we're just having two different ways of looking at it, because I know you mentioned it off air. Was, well, all these guys, they have the Elite 11s, they have these 7-on-7s. But again, if you watch those, that's not real football. That's underwear Olympics. And I think it's just showcasing their skills. It doesn't show you, like, how to cover a guy, how to run a route, how to throw, in route, how to throw an out route, how to, you get your first step well and remain level all the way through the block, how to stay on your block, how to shed a block. It doesn't show it. It just doesn't show off all that stuff, the really basic stuff that you need whenever you play at the highest level of college football. And I think he's right. I think that is the deterioration of football right now. And, Dean Legge, I watched him. He speculated that it was people not playing as much as they used to. Could be. I don't know. I don't think in the South.
I can see that to a certain extent. Guys have become, used to, you played both ways, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I think people maybe are becoming more specialized, and parents and their off the field coaches don't want them playing another position. I don't know. I mean, it sounds reasonable to me.
And I don't think, also you have to think these guys that are coming in, they were 8th grade or 9th grade when COVID happened somewhere. Yeah. So that's an extreme, that's an extremely important moment in your football career is around that time. That's whenever you start seeing a separation between the men and the boys and who's are actually the good football players. And a lot of these kids didn't even have a football season that year.
Yeah.
That's actually interesting to know. I think you're seeing that all over college football right now.
I think it's a combination of all those things, but I think the NIL and the transfer portal and blowing these kids up to make them think that, and they are special athletes. I'm not being dismissive, but that you can get and play big time college football and get playing time when you walk on as a freshman just because you're a 4 and 5 star, when you haven't matured and developed the skill set. You're a great athlete, but you haven't worked hard enough at your craft yet and have enough hours logged in the real practices to be ready to play big time college football. And I think put all those things together is probably what Kirby's talking about.
Yeah. Well, and also I saw this thing on social media. It was by a Tennessee writer. he said that the gap has shrunk between Tennessee and Georgia. It's funny. That's not how that works. I know they really are hoping that's how it works, but that's
Well,
not.
hope is not a strategy, Tennessee.
Hope isn't. Yeah, it's never been a strategy, but they're banking on it. They've been banking on it since '98.
Well, here's the thing. I don't know who said that, but if he's paying that close attention to Kirby Smart's press conference, I think we've already won, because I can bet your sweet ass I'm not paying attention to Josh Heupel's press conferences. So I don't know. I can't tell you anything about Tennessee's team yet and what Josh Heupel, but yet he knows what Kirby's saying. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I know. Well, and also Kirby's comment reached pretty. Whenever he speaks, a lot of people talk about it. But Kirby's the king of the opposites. And to me, whenever Kirby's like, we're not where we need to be yet, and sloppy, and he says all those things, I go, well, all right, I think we're in a really good spot, because he did not talk once about like anybody being like really bad or like not being able to like do the simple things. It was the inability to do the simple things, but everything else seemed to work fine. So that makes me feel fine. It makes me feel good.
Yeah, I don't put much stock in what Kirby or any coach is saying right now.
Well,
it's almost like a formula, you know.
Yeah.
You got to break the team back down and tell them how bad they are early in the camp, and then run them ragged, and then start building them back up before the first game. So I think it's just part of kind of Kirby's strategy to let these guys know they're not they're not setting the world on fire yet. They got a ways to go to continue to improve. So I don't put a whole lot of stock in that stuff.
Well, I do put in some things that he does say, and this will be my last point on the press conference with Kirby. When he says they can't execute, or they're sloppy and they're not doing the simple things right, yada yada yada. It's also the first scrimmage, so that's again why I don't. To your point, you shouldn't really take stock in it. But his follow up to that, I do put stock in, and maybe it's foolish, but I do. He said this team is led, it's player led, and they're seniors who are coaching the freshmen up on what to do and what not to do. Older guys are taking younger guys under their wing and showing them, hey, this is what we do. This is not what you do. This is how you run this. And to me, those are the best teams. Those are teams that are going to win in January whenever it matters. So that's why I feel overly optimistic with this team. I think Kirby knows that this team's really good. I think he just wants it to get to where it's a final machine. And I think with having Clemson first game, I think everyone's going to be laser focused. They're not going to kind of stumble out of the gate like they did last year, where basically the first 3 games they sleptwalked. It wasn't until Auburn that they, in the fourth quarter there, that they woke up.
Well, they sleptwalked, and also Bobo, and I think by virtue of Bobo, Smart was trying to protect a first-year starting quarterback in Carson Beck early on. So I think those 2 things have led to the sleepwalks in the first 3, but they better not be sleepwalking, especially with this schedule. You can't afford to lose to Clemson, my man. We still got Bama, Texas, Ole Miss, Kentucky. This is a murderer's row. So, yeah, they better be laser focused.
Yeah, I agree. All right. You got any other things on Kirby's presser that you wanted to take away or say?
No. I think out of the scrimmages, though, this one coming up Saturday, we'll start separating the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. You'll start honing in on who's going to be able to help this football team win. The other guys are going to be on practice squad. So I think first scrimmage, they're looking at everybody and making an assessment of who potentially can help us. They double down on that and give those guys more looks at the second scrimmage, and you'll know a lot more about who's actually probably going to see the field after this second scrimmage than you can on the first one. So we'll see.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. We'll probably talk about that. We'll probably make one Monday or Tuesday whenever all the information comes out and, talk about it. We'll do like a brief little podcast on it. All right. Changing gears here. Let's talk about we did a Georgia game by game prediction. You had Georgia on you didn't predict them to lose 2 games, but you predicted them to be on alert for 2 games.
I think it's yes. To put I think it is more probable that they will lose 2 games than they will go undefeated. I will say it that way.
See, and then I have Georgia either losing 1 game or none. It's really hard. I picked Georgia to win every game because if you look at it from a game by game prognosis, Georgia should win every game.
Well, they're favored in every game.
So, exactly. Yeah. So I can see them, slipping. All right. So let's talk about the SEC championship. Who do you have in the SEC championship?
Well, this is going to be a hot take, I guess, but I'm going to have Georgia and LSU playing in the SEC championship. I don't believe DeBoer and that quarterback. I don't think that's going to be a good mesh. I'm not a believer in Ole Miss because of Lane Kiffin never winning, a big game. I'm happy. I mean, we'll see if I'm proven wrong, but I believe Kelly's a good coach. I believe that quarterback is pretty good, and their defense has got to be hopefully better. So, yeah, I'm picking LSU and Georgia.
Well, I'm not really a believer in DeBoer. I'm not at all a believer in Texas. I know everyone. I think right now the consensus pick is between Ole Miss and Texas. I'm not a big believer in Texas. I don't think they have. I don't think they have what it takes on defense. I don't think they have what it takes on the offensive line. And defensive line, if we're being really honest.
Well, and by the way, if you don't believe that they're off, it's all going to fall on your shoulders and the skill players at receiver, right? But if you don't have an offensive line, you're down to your 3rd running back. That's a lot of pressure on that quarterback. So
right, and they have great wide receivers and they have a good quarterback. I think they're going to be caught flat-footed in a couple of these games here, and they're going to realize what the SEC is all about. So with that, I'm not a believer in LSU. I'm not a believer in Brian Kelly. I never have been, never will be. I think the SEC championship is going to be Georgia and Alabama. I think Ole Miss will probably drop a game, and then they'll lose to Georgia. Texas, I think, loses 3 games. I think Alabama probably goes unscathed outside of the Georgia game. Maybe.
Well, I'm going to throw a dark horse in there. I'm not picking them, but it would not totally shock me if Missouri's in there.
Yeah, but again, a lot of depth and a lot of the star players left, and that's why I wouldn't pick. But their schedule is extremely easy,
that's what I was about to say. Yeah.
Yeah, they could absolutely. I agree with you. If it's not, I had a hard time picking who was going to be. I think Missouri's probably right up there in my mind against Alabama. I can see Alabama being a 2-loss team, a 3-loss team, and still getting into the SEC championship because of all the technicalities and all that crap. All right. Let's do the Big 20 or the Big 10 as it used to be called. I have Ohio State and Oregon playing in the championship. I have Ohio State winning it.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I think those are the 2 best teams in that conference. So I'll go along with that. And I think Ohio State's for real. I'm not a believer in Ryan Day, but again, it goes back to what we were talking about with the blue chip players and the percentage. I believe it's Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia, and I don't know what order, but they're loaded at every position group. So I would say Ohio State's my pick in that as well.
Yeah, all right. And then the ACC championship, I have Clemson and Miami playing in it. So that kind of gives you a hint of what I think about the playoffs. I think Miami has a really good quarterback. I don't like Mario Cristobal. I don't think he's that good of a coach, but he was able to get Oregon to the Pac-12 championship consistently whenever he was there. I think Miami's schedule is pretty favorable. And if they go and they beat Florida, I think this team's going to roll. So I picked them. I'm going to pick, shockingly, Clemson to win the ACC. I don't think Florida State's that good. They have DJ Ungamalea or whatever the hell you pronounce his last name.
Has he gotten over his PTSD from when we played him against when he was quarterback for Clemson?
Well, he was all the way. He was at Oregon State last year. So he
almost made it back home.
Yeah,
he's come back to Devil's Den.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't have a whole lot of faith in them. They had a lot of people leave the program. So I think Clemson has a good enough defense to carry them throughout the season. They also have a very favorable schedule. So that's who I have in the ACC championship.
Clemson, I would agree with. I'll be honest with you. I don't know enough about that conference to probably speak intelligently. I know Cristobal is probably a good coach, but I can't get over what he did pissing the game away against Tech. So I think somewhere along the way, he's good to pull a boneheaded, to keep him out of a championship game. I don't know. Pick who's about North Carolina. I know they lost the quarterback, but is
Matt Brown still there?
I'll go with North Carolina and Clemson, and I'll pick Clemson to win the ACC.
By the way, I don't believe it at all, but the dark horse in the ACC, you know who it is?
North Carolina?
No, it's Tech.
Oh, really? No.
Yeah. People are big on Haynes King right now.
I think he's a much better quarterback than they've had there in a long time. But yeah, I don't know if they're going to have enough talent across the board to compete at that level.
I don't either. All right, and then the Big 12. This is probably one of my favorite teams right now, outside of everyone else. The top four, I guess, outside of Georgia. This is probably my favorite. I think Oklahoma State is going to play in the Big 12 championship. I have them going against Utah. I think Oklahoma State's going to win the Big 12. I also think Ollie Gordon, the running back for Oklahoma State, barring injury, will probably win the Heisman this year.
I think Utah has been in the mix every single. In several years in a row. It just been knocked out.
12, yeah.
So I'll pick Utah to win it, just because I like what's his name, the coach out there, Whittingham or something like that.
Kyle Whittingham.
Yeah, he's been consistent, so that's who I'm going to pick.
Yeah, and Cam Rising's up for Heisman talk too.
He's coming back. Yeah, that's right.
So Utah. I think Utah's going to have a really good season, but I like Oklahoma State a lot. I like that running back. I can't get over that. All right, so here are my 12 teams for the 12-team playoff. It's Georgia. There's no particular order because, God, if you predict that, you're kind of crazy. Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, Oklahoma State, Oregon, Notre Dame. That might come bite me in the ass later. I always pick them. Memphis, Utah, Alabama, Miami, Ole Miss, and Kansas State.
So I can't. Again, outside of the Southeastern Conference, and I don't know if I can speak in. I don't have any major disagreements with anybody that you put in there. What's going to be interesting to me is how many teams from the SEC are represented. I think Ole Miss could be in. I think obviously Alabama, Georgia, Texas could be in there. I think you could have as many as 5.
LSU's in the SEC championship.
Oh yeah, LSU as well. And they got Georgia's playing 5 teams in the top 15 on our schedule.
It's Alabama, Texas, Ole Miss, Clemson.
Tennessee's in 15.
Oh yeah, Tennessee. That's right.
So, we'll if they make it through that unscathed, you cannot argue, and you can't get penalized by playing in the well, I guess you can, but the SEC championship, you can't go from 1 to 6 just because you happen to lose a game. So somebody's got to open their eyes to watch friggin' football and pick the 12 best teams. This at-large BS that we're talking about, it's got me extremely nervous about what we're actually going to get in the top 12 teams.
Well, I think someone's going to end up getting cheated out of a spot because Tulane or, Boise State, or I have Memphis gets in. They're the highest rated G5 school. And that's whenever you're going to get an outcry. I don't think they're going to they'll find a way to put Georgia in that 12-team playoff. If it's going to be anyone, it'll be like a Miami, maybe Oklahoma State, a Kansas State, where they're a team that didn't play in their conference championship. They were good enough, probably didn't win a game that they should have won, and they're clinging on, and then they get pushed down because this G5 school's in. I think that we're only in a 2-year contract with this current playoff, right? I think
so.
I think there's going to be some rule changes probably after this year. I think they're going to have to work the kinks out.
Oh, yeah. It's if we still can't get it right after expanding to 12, you're going to have a really hard time with me going, well, let's make it 16.
Well,
which is what they're already, rumors of. To me, get the 12 right first before we, you're just going to fuck up 16 instead of 12. You know what I'm saying? I don't have any trust in it.
Yeah, I have no trust in it either. And here's the other thing: I don't know what they're going to do. Like if you have a 3-loss team that, like, say they're in the Big Ten or the SEC, and they had a pretty hard schedule. What are you going to do about that? And how are you going to look at that? I don't know how they're going to do it.
I don't either.
Because you shouldn't be penalized for playing a harder schedule than everyone else.
Is Georgia's schedule the toughest out of everybody?
Florida's the toughest.
Oh, yeah, that's right, Florida. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I hope it's not us having that argument with ourselves this come January.
I just don't see it. All right. You got a prediction for the Heisman Trophy?
Oh, I'm picking Carson Beck, bro. I'm serious.
I know you are. It's just not going to happen.
Why not?
Because it's not the type of football that they don't play Heisman ball.
Okay, well, I'm still picking him.
Well, okay, I guess.
So same argument that I would have about picking the 12 best teams. You're going to pick the best player, the most influential, most impactful player. You're going to all due respect to Gunnar Stockton. You put Gunnar Stockton as our starting quarterback. Are we still talking about Georgia going? Are you still talking about Georgia going undefeated? That to me is a Heisman Trophy candidate.
Well, okay, fair enough. All right, who do you have playing in the national title?
I've got Georgia and Ohio State. It's going to be a rematch from the cardiac game that we played a couple of years ago.
So I guess we're both going chalk here. I just think these are the two best teams. The real question to me is, does Ohio State actually is Will Howard actually the answer to the quarterback problems that they had last year? The jury's still out on that. I want to say no, but that's just an Ohio State hater in me. So I don't know. And then, do they have quality depth? I hear how talented Ohio State is. Is it quality depth? I don't know. I think Georgia has quality depth. I would say if it's not going to be Ohio State, it's going to be Oregon. So it's either Georgia, Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State. I think that's your national champion or national championship. Obviously, I think we're at a consensus on this. I think Georgia, we're both drinking the Kool-Aid and thinking Georgia's going to win another national championship.
To me, and I hear you about Oregon. Hard to argue with it. Somehow, in my mind, they always get left out. We talk about the big, the power teams, the rich getting richer. It's really the Georgias, the Alabamas, Ohio State. I guess you put Michigan, Oregon, and I'm sure there's a couple other teams that you can put in there. But to me, those are the teams that you can pretty much, for the next couple of years, one of maybe a half a dozen teams are probably going to be in the mix for a national championship over the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I agree. And if it's not Georgia's time now, I don't know when it's going to be in the future. So it's imperative that we get at least one more to hold us over for the next one. I don't know, whenever that one may be. But anyway, we're 3 weeks, we're 17 days away from kickoff. Week 0 is going to be here in 2 weeks, so we'll probably we'll start doing 2 a week. One probably, what day you think we'll probably record on, like a Wednesday?
Yeah, I would probably need to do one on a Sunday too after the game.
Well, we'll do one prior to the game, give our predictions or thoughts, probably come out on a Thursday, and then a recap of the games on Sunday. So it's all coming down pretty soon. So make sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow us on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok. Again, we're really big on TikTok, guys. I keep seeing people saying on comments that they're subscribing. So TikTok, it's all Terminus_sports ATL on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. Remember to like and subscribe. Our presenting sponsor, our banner sponsor, Unishippers Atlanta. Pitch it away.
Yeah, if we can help you with your small parcel shipping like FedEx and UPS, as well as your less than truckload based out of Atlanta, but we work nationwide. And if you call in to Unishippers Atlanta, ask for Marcus Gore.
All right, ask for Marcus. He needs it. And we'll see you on the other side.